All right, how are you doing? We're going to go ahead and look at a few videos today. I've already looked through all of them. I've actually had some conversations with the team about a few of them. Hope you don't mind about that. We always like to approach it as a team from time to time, especially when it comes to an individual that has had a extensive injury history. With that being said, a few things that I want to start off with is actually going to be with these. We're mainly going to talk about the squat, the deadlift, T-spine mobility, and breathing. So we're going to go ahead and start. Well, looking at the bench press real quick, bench press looks great. Looks absolutely great. I'm not even going to touch up on that. Looks good. I'm not seeing any issues here. Nice, beautifully stacked position at the bottom. Arch is looking good. I do believe that continuing to work on T-spine mobility, specifically extension, is going to continue to benefit your bench press position. But at the same time, that's just going to come with time. For now, looks great. No issues whatsoever. Last thing I would say with the bench press is, and this carries over to all lifts, I want to continue working on breathing and bracing mechanics as well. But again, that's going to carry over all lifts, and we'll get into more of that in a second. Now, next, moving on to your squats. So after talking about this with the team, I do want to start adding in more wider stance work. We are concerned that it is possible that going with a closer stance, going to that close of a stance of a squat with the knees traveling that far forward can cause some issues considering your injury history, and getting more squat volume in a wider stance may be beneficial for a number of different reasons like, again, we talked over. So I'm going to go ahead and start adding in as an accessory some wide stance squats. Now, the main purpose is, I think that in terms of just from looking at the joint centration perspective, getting more volume in a wider stance, I think is going to be beneficial for strength. But furthermore, it should also hurt the knee less, I guess you could say. I know that we talked about in the beginning, you can't go over a certain amount of sets, reps, specifically reps, in a week with a squat. I think you can actually break that over time, not right now, but over time by changing up your stance a little bit. I think that's your rep limit for your current stance with your knees traveling as far forward as they are, but getting in a little bit different position, a little bit more centrated position, could have you being able to handle more volume, get stronger, and yeah, that's all we can ask for, right? But looking at this here, I want to go ahead and show you what I'm talking about here. I want to turn, right now, we have a pretty close stance. We're about here. Very close stance, if anything, a little more narrow. And as we squat down, we're having quite a bit of forward knee travel. And because of it, we're also having a little bit of issues getting as deep as we could go because of it. So we're ending up here, knees traveling pretty far forward, and up from there. So going from there to here with some of our squat work, and that's going to end up with this position. With this position in comparison to this position, and I think that's going to be very beneficial, like I mentioned before, with handling more volume, getting more work in, and upsetting that knee less. So we're going to go ahead and add in wide stance squats as a accessory, see how they go, see how it affects the knee, and then move on from there. So that's one of the things I want to talk a little bit about. Just let me know if you have any concerns or reservations about that whatsoever. Looking at the squat itself, not a whole lot new from what I mentioned last week. I want to continue to really start to work on your T-spine mobility. I want to continue hammering down at that, along with your breathing and bracing mechanics. Now, anytime an individual, I've seen people with great breathing mechanics, really good breathing mechanics. But the second that the individual is having shoulder issues, in fact, there's one specific person I have in mind that trains here at Kabuki Strength, no need to mention his name, but he is kind of like someone that's been working with Kabuki since the very start. He's been very into breathing mechanics from the very start. The guy has perfect breathing, always be breathing correctly. But the second he started experiencing a really bad shoulder injury that then also caused another shoulder injury, he ended up going from this nice squat position to this squat position here. And the second he did, in the squat alone, he just couldn't breathe the way he should. This breathing mechanics turned into this breathing mechanics. and he just couldn't inflate. He couldn't build as much intra-abdominal pressure, and he couldn't stabilize his spine nearly as well. And he even started having a little bit of extension flexion issues as he squatted. So the number one thing he had to do is start getting into a little bit better position up here. So in terms of breathing, I am seeing, and initially you're breathing pretty well in terms of filling up down here. We're going, and then we have a lot of vertical motion towards the end. I want to continue to work on your breathing mechanics, because what you'll learn is the better you get at breathing, the more you can end up inflating and building meaningful intra-abdominal pressure. So I want to continue working on breathing mechanics, but the number one thing I want to introduce to you is the concept of sipping the oxygen out of the air. Just funny little way of putting it. I love this way of putting it, because it doesn't matter how good you are at breathing, the faster you go, the worse it's likely to get. And I'm not saying you're fast by any means, but I do think that slowing it down a little bit can be beneficial. And this is actually something that when I first started working at Kabuki Strength years and years ago, Chris Duffin actually suggested and brought onto me. I thought I had pretty good breathing mechanics, but most of my air was still coming vertically, kind of chest-like breathing. And what I noticed is that when he set up his breathing and bracing mechanics for a squat, it was incredibly slow. No one likes to go very slow because they got 500, 600, 700 pounds on their back. That's fair, to say the least. But at the same time, he had 880 on his back. I think he was doing like the 880 for 30 days straight challenge or something ridiculous like that. And it was sipping the oxygen out of the air, slow as hell. And then go. And obviously, his squat about as close to perfect as you can get. And then once I started incorporating those philosophies and started breathing a lot slower, my breathing got a ton better. So I think the two biggest areas for improvement in your squat right now, continue to hammer down on the T-spine mobility so we can go from here to here. I think that'll automatically have a benefit to your ability to breathe and brace, along with many other things. But at the same time, also starting to dial in those breathing mechanics, slowing it down just a little bit, breathing slower as you set those mechanics in your squat, are all going to have some really nice benefits to your ability to handle load. The next thing I want to talk about is going to be your conventional deadlift, which we will look at here. So something that I really want to have some discussions about is going to be introducing the topic of getting a little bit more of a controlled tension building process. I really want to work on this more than anything. Right now, we are going through a large range of motion to build tension. This occurs in the sumo. This happens in the conventional. A lot of individuals try to go through a really large range of motion to build tension by straightening their legs and then squatting down and jamming them into place to get in a position and then going. With conventional deadlift, a lot of individuals can kind of get away with this and still have some pretty good mechanics, but at the same time with sumo, it always ends up being bad. But anyways, we're not talking about sumo. When it comes to conventional, I do believe that working within a more controlled range of motion to build tension and really dialing in your ability to create bend in the bar, pressing your feet in the floor, separating your upper body from the barbell as you set up a little more slowly is going to help your deadlift a ton. Because right now in our deadlift, we do have a little bit of forward motion at the very start of every lift. Some are worse than others, but we do have that little bit of forward motion taking place there. Watch this once more. Look at those shoulders specifically as we set up and go. Boom, just a little bit of forward motion. That was very small. Follow-up reps kind of got a little bit more severe there. As you can see, little range motion there, little forward motion there. And with this here, the way I always like to put it is wasted motion within a lift, specifically a deadlift, is death with maximal load. But furthermore, even if it's not death, even if you strength through it, because it's a lighter load that you're more easily able to handle, still that forward motion is going to put a lot more strain on our spinal erectors, on our lumbar spine, and just not going to be as efficient as we want the deadlift to be. Rather, we would like to be straight up from the very start. So what I want to do to fix that is just building more tension. I think the idea that you need a really big range of motion to build tension within is one I want to get away from a little bit, instead just focusing on the intentionality of the range of motion you go through. So if the range of motion talk's not really making sense, I'll kind of show you real quick what I'm referring to. A lot of individuals, as they set up for the conventional deadlift, will go down, and a lot of individuals will hinge real nicely, keep their hips high at the start, and then breathe, brace, set up, and go. Now, in that small range of motion I just went through, they're pushing their feet so hard through the floor and separating their upper body from the barbell so hard as they set up, they create a ton of bar bend, get in a more advantageous position because of it, and on top of that, just tension the bar beautifully. But unfortunately, a lot of people end up going from here to here right before they deadlift, and then going through a quick range of motion to go. And they think the greater range of motion equals better tension or a better setup, but it doesn't always occur like that because the forward motion you're experiencing, I believe, is a direct relationship to the fact that we could be building more tension. So I want to go ahead and change things up, or consider changing things up, going from this setup here to this setup here. Instead, hinging over real nicely and just working, just going really slowly, pressing your feet to the floor as hard as you can, separating your upper body from the barbell as we hinge our hips, build as much tension as possible, and then coming up from there. Not necessarily needing as big of a range of motion to go through, but instead working with a smaller range of motion and being very intentional within it. Now, the next thing I want to look at with your deadlift is the shoulder position. Notice that when you go to lift the bar off the ground, oftentimes the shoulders, when you go to lift, are actually in front of the barbell by a pretty good amount, which is not going to be complementary to having the most optimal power transfer in the world. So looking at this real quick, showing you what I'm talking about here, you'll notice that the barbell's back here and your shoulders are up here. Your shoulders are quite a few inches in front of the barbell, and I'd like them to get more stacked over the barbell. So no matter what we do with their setup, even if you have the exact same setup, what I really want to focus on more than anything is just getting this upper body further back to have our shoulders directly over the barbell. All right, so looking at this here, you'll notice that as you go to set up, one of the things that a lot of people miss is their upper body working against the barbell to build tension. Doesn't matter if it's the sumo or the conventional, thinking about almost T-spine extension or pressing our collarbones back, two cues to try to attempt to do the same thing, which is getting your upper body to build tension for you in the barbell and get further back so your shoulder becomes centrated directly above the barbell, which is going to be the best position to lift from. And looking at this here, you'll notice that if we were to, unfortunately I can't slow this down, I really wish I could because it's pretty quick, but you'll notice that your hips have this giant change through your setup as you set up for the deadlift, but your upper body stays in pretty much the same position as you do so. Now, if your upper body were to work against the barbell a little bit more, thinking about those cues of T-spine extension, collarbones back, your shoulder position could go from here to here directly over the barbell, which I think would eliminate some of the issues that we're currently experiencing and make your first motion from the ground really fast and really powerful. So at the very least, I want to start to work to get these shoulders further back and really work on the cues required to just get the upper body building more tension on the barbell for us, and on top of that, getting centrated directly over the barbell as we leave the ground. To recap, after talking to and watching some videos with our injury prevention specialist, I really want to start to make some changes, or I really want to add the accessory squat of going with a wider stance squat and seeing how it feels to your body, seeing how your body responds to it. I think that getting those knees more directly stacked over the ankle, getting them a little bit more centrated position is going to be easier on the knees and end up with less pain for you and possibly more strength adaptations. Furthermore, I also want to really work on the conventional deadlift. I think that going through a shorter range of motion to build tension and building more tension through it is going to be really important to deadlifting more weight and, more importantly, eliminating the forward motion. But also, more than anything, I want to get those shoulders further back. Right now, as you go to deadlift, every single time you do so, the shoulders are just ending up a little too far forward. I'd like to get them further back, directly stacked over the load to help you with the initial lift off the floor, making it more explosive, more centrated. I would really like that change. And a few cues that are going to help to create that is T-spine extension. Are you going to actually extend the T-spine? No, but thinking about it will build more tension in the barbell and get those shoulders further back, preferably directly over the barbell. Also, another cue that sometimes connects with people is collarbones back. Trying to press one's collarbones back can really help to achieve that better position as well. Lastly, I want to continue to really hammer away at T-spine mobility as well as breathing and bracing mechanics, something that can be really beneficial. Just keeping up with your T-spine drills before you squat, before you bench, before you deadlift is going to slowly over time get it better and better. But if that doesn't occur, what we can start to add in is something that I actually came up with a while back, which really helped me, and it's called scapular yoga. What I did is I had very similar issues to you. I was just not in the best squat position, which affected my breathing, my bracing, and many other things, even my hinge mechanics. And what I ended up doing, and I actually had some scapular scapular function issues as well. So what I ended up doing is doing something called scapular yoga, which I would go through a myriad of different T-spine extension and T-spine mobility drills, as well as scapular function drills such as wall slides, such as scapular push-ups and things of that nature. And by doing that for about 2 sessions a week, usually right before I went to bed, I saw tremendous benefits with scapular function as well as T-spine mobility within a few weeks, and it really helped to benefit a lot of my lifts. So this may be something we'll incorporate it in soon. But lastly, I also want to continue to working on breathing drills, adding in at least one breathing drill before you squat each day, and also possibly doing some before you go to bed too. That's something that I do to this day, even though my breathing's pretty good. I'm not really having any issues with it. At the same time, it's a really relaxing drill to do before bed, and on top of that, even when my external stress gets really bad, for example, the fires that have been hitting our area lately, stress got real bad. My breathing went from nice, perfect diaphragmatic breath, filling from the bottom up, building nice IAP, to this big chesty vertical, just because stress got out of hand. So doing those drills again, especially before bed, really helped me and got me back into the correct breathing pattern. So just some things to talk about, or things to think about. Now, if you have any thoughts on anything that I talked about today, or just any concerns, any reservations, please let me know. I would love to as open communication with you as possible. Just let me know if you need anything whatsoever. Let me know if you have any questions. Stay safe out there, Alex.